everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Oh, it's coming around the time where I don't get to be second anymore, Jackie McDonald.
Well, it's not quite yet, but eventually when we get to 2025, I'll go back to being the number 2 name. It is me, Diana.
This is, of all the bits that we could have on the show, I've never understood why this naming convention one is so important to the two of you.
Well, because you always get to be first. You don't understand what it's like to be third for 7 years.
You know, I've offered, why don't we all take turns? And what does everyone say? No, you do it. So, oh well, but this isn't a podcast about who's first in the introduction order. It's a podcast about behavior analysis and behavioral analytic research, where every week we pick a topic and discuss it at length, except for this week, because this week, folks, it's Grab Bag SummerSlam 2024. That's right, where we just randomly pick an article out of a giant bag. That's my favorite bit, where we just have a giant bag of articles. We reach in and we have to talk extemporaneously, except we really don't. We actually pick the articles ahead of time. But isn't it more fun to think that we just do this off the dome, like improv, podcast, research discussion?
I mean, everything we do is improv.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about 3 unrelated articles that we chose because they just spoke to us. They're not based on any theme. We just thought it would be fun to talk about. They might not fit in another episode or follow-ups to an episode that we're not going to do another one on for a while. Who knows the reason? But we're here, and we're here to discuss research articles. So who wants to reach into the grab bag first?
I think you are.
Thought you were reaching first.
Oh, so okay. So even though you don't want to be second or third in the list, you want me to be first and picking into this giant bag. All right, here we go. I'm reaching in, and I have found. Oh, we don't have any props.
Russell.
Okay, Oh, there we go. I'm clearly reaching into a bag. Yeah, that's the bag I opened, or is that me turning the article?
Who knows?
It's like you're painting quite the picture. So I am going to be reading an article, an evaluation of and preference for variations of the good behavior game with students with autism by Vargo and Brown from Behavioral Interventions 2020. This article hit a lot of the Rob Perry Cruz grab bag boxes. Number 1, it's about the good behavior game. And I'm a huge fan.
You love the good behavior game.
I love it.
When I saw this, I was like, classic Rob.
Oh, totally.
Yep, classic.
So it's a totally classic Rob article. Number 2, I love interesting use of prepositions in sentences. Evaluation of and preference for. That's brilliant. What a great title that they've written there. Number 3, it also has something that we've been talking a lot more about, which is assent procedure in the form of a concurrent chains procedure, but not just any concurrent chains procedure, folks. It's a group concurrent chains procedure.
That's cool.
Yep. And what year was it? Why, one of my favorite years, mostly for the phrasing of it, 2020. In terms of what happened in 2020, not such a great year. But it sounds great to say, doesn't it? We got to find our happiness where we can. So yes, so this one's checking all the boxes.
That's how you selected this article.
Very excited. As much as I want to go with the bit, I just pulled it out of a big bag. No, I chose this purposefully. So we talked a little bit about group contingencies. We talked about concurrent chains. We talked about the good behavior game. We've done all these things before, but have we put them all together in one article? And was it written in 2020? This is a first for the show.
You're funny.
So as we all know, when students engage in problem behavior in classrooms, it is very limiting in terms of the ability of teachers to be able to provide them an education, honestly tolerate their continued ability to remain in the classroom. And a lot of times students will end up in sub-separate classrooms for reasons of challenging behavior. Not always are those students autistic, but they can be. We know that having meaningful systems to support appropriate school behavior is very important. We also know that the good behavior game as a group contingency has been in the research since Barish published on it in 1969. It's been replicated a whole bunch. It's considered an inoculation against problem behavior by at least the U.S. Department of Education. And it's a really great kind of system, which I don't see used as well as it could be. This year, I've seen more teachers interested in it, at least from a kind of, my day job level. But a lot of times folks prefer things like the hero game. So they prefer other group contingencies than the good behavior game. So if you've never heard of the good behavior game, it basically boils down to you divide students into some number of teams. You have a number of specific rules that need to be followed. And students can earn rewards based on, again, the original was low levels of problem behavior. So if a student engages in one of the problem behaviors or engages in behavior that kind of precludes them from following the rule of the classroom, that group gets a mark on the board, a tally on the board of like group 1. Remember, we sit in our seats when it's time for learning, or we raise our hand when we have something to share. We keep our hands to ourselves. We use words when we want to get someone's attention rather than hitting them or something like that, right? And then you tally on the board. There have been a lot of variations on good behavior game where you do sort of tallies for the appropriate behavior being followed. They've also done a lot of variations where they use technology, which is going to be a key component of this study. A lot of kids like the good behavior game. A lot of teachers like the good behavior games. A lot of kids like technology because it is fun. And there is a real push to use technology wherever we can use it. Is it to use during good behavior games? I don't think that's what state and national standards are looking for when they want to promote critical 21st century digital knowledge and skills. But hey, if you can use technology, I guess it might be good to do so. So the authors here said, we know that good behavior game is great and we love technology. Could we put the two together? Now, Lin et al. In 2017, they cite, had actually looked at the use of the Class Dojo program to enhance the use of a good behavior game procedure. And in that study, they found that it did decrease rates of problem behavior. It increased rates of academic behavior compared to baseline, which again, we'd all hope so. So there is some reason to think, oh, technology as part of a good behavior game might have an additive effect. But we don't know if it's additive or just the same effect you'd get out of any good behavior game. So is it worth adding technology? If you've never used Class Dojo, it's sort of just, basically the equivalent of if I wrote everyone's name on a board and did tallies, or I wrote all the teams on a board and did tallies, except you can do it on an iPad or do it on a laptop. And it's got like fun little cute avatars. And it looks more fun than just writing team names on a board. But there's no comparison to a traditional good behavior game. And the authors also have really found that there haven't been as many studies as you would think for looking at good behavior games with different disability types, so specific disability types. There've certainly been ones for students in special education settings, students in like emotional behavior classrooms and problem behavior classrooms, but not as much just looking at how do autistic students tend to use and like or not like the good behavior game. So killing a bunch of birds with one stone, the authors are going to try to compare a traditional good behavior game with a technology-enhanced version. They're going to be doing this with a group of autistic students who are in a specialized program at their school. And then, and as I wrote kind of a side note, I guess they probably figured this is probably going to work just as well as it has in all the other research on good behavior games since 1969. What if we also did a group-oriented concurrent chains arrangement to see which of these types of good behavior game do the students like? So again, getting a scent and then using a group concurrent chain, which we talked about.
I love all of that.
There's been a couple articles on it, but it's sort of one of those things of I didn't even know you could do that, kind of falls into that category, but you can. So our participants are 6 high school students diagnosed with autism. They're in a special education classroom due to high rates of disruptive behavior. So that'd be things like refusal to do work, leaving the space, arguing with adults. And in this study, the students already took part in a token economy in their classroom. It was tied into a school store. So the teacher, who was the secondary author here, already kind of had a system in place and was able to tie the good behavior game into that system. And the teacher is actually the second author of this paper, which is another thing I like to see, which is practitioner-based research. It's checking all the boxes, folks. As I wrote in my note, all these are such good things. So we've got a multi-element design embedded within a reversal, which is always fun to see. So for 5 days of the week, so every day there was school, they had a good behavior game variation, either standard good behavior game or one of 2 different technology-enhanced good behavior games. They did this during math class because that's where the most disruptive behavior was occurring. The measurement was partial interval of whether disruptive behavior was occurring in the classroom. The teacher used, here's a great use of technology, the earphone or the Bluetooth earbud that allows you to hear when is it time to switch settings, or when is it time to sort of take data on my partial interval. I love using that as technology. So we start off with baseline, which was just what was happening prior to the implementation of the good behavior game. Then we quasi-randomly presented the good behavior game variations once a day. Again, the goal here was a traditional good behavior game. So the goal is to get under a number of points. It was 10 points, which they just pulled from the mean, 50% of the mean group baseline for disruptive behavior. And the goal is to get under 10 points. So every student was put into a team. We had 2 teams. Their member names were up on the board so everyone knew what team they were in.
Did they get to pick their team name?
I did not mention if they got to pick a team name or not. No,
because that's critical. I'm just kidding.
It is fun to name your own team. That is true. They always had a colored card because, as we know, in a concurrent chains arrangement, you're going to want to have sort of what is the initial link. In this case, it was going to be, we present a card so that you know what is the contingency that is in play. So to start, it was just, today we're doing the good behavior game like this, and it's paired with the white card, the blue card, or the green card with the 3 cards chosen. So depending on which one you got, that's the good behavior game variation we're going to play today. She'd read a script. The teacher would read a script to the students, make sure they knew that their goal. And if the team met a goal, and again, all teams can win in a good behavior game, they get 5 tokens that they could use in their school store that opened at the end of the day. It had like school supply, shirts, you get computer time, lunch with the teacher, everyone's favorite lunch with the teacher, homework passes.
Kids do like that.
Some
Kids
do,
love
some
that.
don't. I'm hoping they don't mention whether they've done any sort of preference assessment to determine if the kids wanted any of these prizes or not, but let's hope so. And if you don't get the goal, you don't meet the goal, you just don't get the tokens, right? So traditional good behavior game was the white card. It was just a matter of if one of the teams engaged in disruptive behavior, reminder, put up on the board, they got vocal feedback, and they got the tally on the board. One thing I was not clear of, usually in good behavior game, you don't specify the student. You specify the team that had a broken rule. It did not get into enough detail for me to say whether or not this was a variation where student names were also tallied. So it wasn't team 1 broke a rule. It was Billy, you broke a rule.
Depends. Sometimes you will see it with the student name, but that's one of the critiques of the GBG is that it could call out an individual.
So I've never run it that way. Most of the research I've read has not run it that way. I'm not saying that you couldn't run it that way. I think it gives me a bad feeling to point out that kids are not doing. If you're going to do that, why just use an independent design? If you're just going to if you want to call kids out, the point of the team is that sort of everyone wins or everyone loses together, right? But another piece is technologically, I do not know if Class Dojo has like team settings or the other app they use, which was class badges. So I don't actually know whether or not they were sort of like, here are your fun avatars, and they're together as a group, and you're all getting tallies or not. Or whether it was, here's every kid. So it may have been a variation that was limited by technology, that you couldn't do it as a team. Don't know. It wasn't in the study. That would be something I'd want to know. In any case, moving on, Blue Card was the Class Dojo. It was a computer app. The students saw their cool avatars on the screen. And again, disruptive behavior, it went next to their avatar. So in this case, it did sound like it was pointing out the kids by their avatars, which might be why the traditional varied a little bit in terms of every kid name got a tally. And then finally, they used a different app called Class Badges, which was just kind of the same as Class Dojo, except it was just boring and it just displayed the points. So it was like the weakest use of technology one could think of, look, I could have written this, but instead it's typed. So not very exciting. No fun avatars. And each day they quasi-randomly put out the card and say, here's the rules. They remind the kids of the rules. And when they saw that all 3 variations resulted in a decrease of disruptive behavior compared to baseline, they started their concurrent chains arrangement. All right, so they did a quick pretest. They said which of these cards goes with which variation to make sure the kids understood that the cards were paired with the different contingencies at play. They all passed. And then every day they would say, okay, here are your cards. Pick the one that you want to do, which is our initial link. And then they'd put all the chosen cards into a bag. And then they do preference voting. So they take out all the cards, and whichever the terminal link became, whichever variation had the most votes in the bag, that one was the one that they were going to run for that day. And they did this until they sort of saw the same kind of 4 consecutive selections or until they hit 10 trials. Since they were worried that the students were sort of choosing the color that seemed like it was going to win because it was the color that always won, which would not actually be a measure of someone's preference so much as a measure of kind of social cachet, I guess. The researchers did a preference lottery for a little while in which, again, they just said, put in the one you want. That's your initial link. Put in the card for the variation you want. And then they would randomly choose from the bag. So the odds would change, but it wasn't like, oh, everyone should probably vote for the same. And they did both of these just, again, to see which one the students preferred. So they all worked in terms of all of these decreased disruptive behavior. They went from about average of about 55% of intervals in baseline to a drop of 7% of disruptive behavior intervals in the traditional GBG, 4% for the Class Dojo GBG, and 7% for the Class Badges GBG. They did the reversal. They saw what they wanted to see in the reversal, which is the partial interval scores went back to their baseline levels. They returned to treatment and again saw an immediate decrease to sort of the lower levels. Class Dojo down to 2%, traditional to 6%, and Class Badges to like 8%, I think. So looking at the preference voting, since all of these worked, Class Dojo always won. So when it was, the majority of votes, it was always Class Dojo. When they switched to the preference lottery, it was either the traditional GBG or Class Dojo that would win. If you look at the cumulative number of selections, pretty much the same kids always voted for Class Dojo and the same kids always voted for the traditional good behavior games, Luddites or something. For whatever reason, that's the one they liked. So everything works, but if you were going to pick a variation, it seems like a lot of students, at least autistic students in this one classroom, liked the Class Dojo variation. I don't think it adds anything necessarily to be using Class Dojo versus writing things on a board. But hey, if people like it better, why not use it, right?
It's got cute little avatars.
Yeah, it's fun. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's all you have to say to me.
It's got
love
cute little
little
avatars.
avatar.
Can you dress them?
That was my next question.
Hey, when everyone says I don't have money for
Can
the
you
school store,
personalize?
can you purchase little swords and wizard wands and stuff for your avatar? And then it's take the cost out of the equation. I don't know. That's a good question.
Can you dress him for the season?
Yeah. So what do we find out? Well, good behavior games still works. It's worked in all the other research. Why not again? And
kind of like BST.
Yeah. And this is a good example of how to use concurrent chains arrangements in the group to get a sense of preferences for some of these variations. And it does seem that technology is slightly preferred over traditional means. So again, not for everybody. So maybe your lottery is a better system to use. It was free. It didn't require any training to use. So again, we have assent to use a procedure that is effective. Now, some limitations, and some of these are limitations of the authors, some are kind of my own thoughts. Is technology always that great? One of the problems they ran into with Class Badges is the app shut down as they were doing the study or or maybe it was right after the study. So anytime we use these apps, there is a chance that you get used to being part of some ecosystem that goes away. And you now have to find a new ecosystem, which takes a lot of time and can be a real pain in the butt.
It's happening for me with Jamboards.
Oh, because they just shut them down.
And Flipgrid, both of which were things that I used and are now gone.
So it's one of those kind of frustrations of, well, if you use technology, how long is it going to be here forever? And even when it's a big company like Google, they sunset a ton of their stuff. So that is a real limitation to using any technology. I did think they brought up the sort of, was there a color preference? We didn't assess preference for colors beforehand, which is one of those sort of, you kind of have to put it in there, but I don't think that was a big limitation. However, I did think it was hilarious. And then why did they use the colors that they were forced to use or that they had to use in the study, the green, the blue, the green, and the white cards? Because when talking about the study with administration said, please use those colors. They're the school colors, which I thought was kind of adorable. That the administration was like, I do care about your research. Use the school colors. Again, there are some really good extensions. Does it matter whether they're gaining points or losing points? So would you get the same results, gaining points and losing points? Are there other ways to use the technology? Is this going to be true for larger groups of students? And I think the big question here is this actually a meaningful use of technology, or is it just kind of cute and fun? Even if it's more preferred, does it matter if it doesn't really add anything? If everybody or if a lot of people like it more? Yeah. I think that is important. However, I also say there's a big difference between everyone seems to like the cute little avatar version of this meaningful, useful system that we have in place. However, that's not the same as, and this is a great use of technology. Mm-hmm. Could we add more gamification procedures to even enhance how the good behavior game works? I don't see how, because those numbers were really dropping to single digit disruptive behavior intervals. I don't know how much better you're going to get there. So again, if you like technology, here's a great way you could test out whether it's worth using in your classroom because your students like it. All right. But again, a nice extension of good behavior game and kind of a fun way to use the group concurrent chains designs. And technology, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. Test it out, why don't you? That's
Good
my
job.
article.
Okay, great. After each of these, I'm going to give you a pairings with only one episode.
Whoa, this is new. This is
Mini
new for the
pairings.
SummerSlam.
Exactly, yep. So, Rob, for your pairings, I'm going to provide to you and our listeners episode 21, where we talked about, wait for it, the good behavior game.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
21.
Yeah, we did. And then what did you have for breakfast?
I haven't had anything yet. A cup
Oh,
of coffee.
no. Snack
Oh,
is
no.
nothing.
That's so sad.
Well, I'm going out.
Nothing.
I'm going out for a late lunch, and I was
Okay.
like, "Why?
It's
I'm gonna
just
spend
black
money. I'm hungry.
coffee.
Black
I said
coffee.
black coffee.
Gross.
Sad.
You know what? Once you start drinking black coffee, and your wife stops making fun of you for putting 70 sugars in your coffee like you
It
used
was
to,
a lot of sugars.
and you do actually get to tell the difference between good and bad coffee.
Yeah, that's true.
I never understood the difference. I was like, I don't know, this one's not great, or these are all kind of gross. But man, you don't put anything in there, you can taste when coffee is bad because it's disgusting.
There you go. Pro tip.
Bro, we just got tons here on the Grab Bag SummerSlam. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to reach back into the bag for our last two articles. We'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
And we are back, reaching into the grab bag for a Grab Bag Summer Slam. But before we continue, let's remind our listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE and QABA approved. And by listening to our show, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is listen to the rest of the show and the part that came before too. Don't just listen from here on out. And then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, or click the link in your podcast player notes section, the show notes section, and enter in some key information, including 2 secret code words. And since it's the Summer Slam, I have some relevant words. And the first code word is Undertaker. UNDER. Let me do that again. Hold on. UNDERTAKER. The Undertaker. He's a wrestler, right?
Well, that's what the SummerSlam
That's what it
is.
is. Diana was like, what is this
I
morbid
thought it was like
code
a
word?
poetry slam.
It is not a poetry slam. No, it's a wrestling slam. Get out of here with the poetry slam.
Snap, 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 snap.
Yeah. Sorry, Walt Whitman. No poetry slam for you. Undertaker.
Okay, great.
All right, who's reaching into the grab bag next?
Me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here I go. Crinkle, crinkle.
Crinkle, crinkle, crrr.
That is convincing. Okay. I have selected an article that's also quite topical for my interest. Wow, who would have thought that this could have occurred? This article is Kemp, Etheridge, Richling, Drummond, and Soto. The article is titled, Is M&M Therapy a Misnomer or a Concerning Truth? A descriptive analysis of the use of edible reinforcers in applied behavior analytic research.
Tell them why it's so interesting.
I will. But it was published in Behavior Interventions 2024. And it's relevant, well, because we already know this is a topic I'm interested in
yes.
based on previous episode. But it is highly relevant because I was in the process of preparing an incredibly similar article
Mhm.
to this one. And then I saw this and I was like, they already did it. And it just got published. So that does happen sometimes. So great job, Kemp and team. This is a good topic. I'm still going to find a way to pursue my additional interests in finding out more about this topic.
Did you hear that, Kemp and colleagues? Diana's coming for you. She's going to put the world of
No.
on you.
This is a great starting point for, I think,
SummerSlam.
additional research that needs to be done in this area. So I was very happy that it came out. and that I get to talk to you all lovely people about it.
So hilariously, we put our articles in the folder so that we have them all together. And Diana renamed mine, and then was like, "We picked the same article." And the original article that I had nothing to do with anything Diana's interested in at all. And I was like, "Weird that we picked the same article."
Yeah,
and it wasn't.
Right. So they were both in there, and they had just like, I think like the downloaded name where it's just like a string of letters name. And so I renamed one of them my article, but it was Jackie's article. And then I opened it and I was like, oh, she picked the same article as me. But it was just that I'd done it backwards.
It was
I don't
amazing.
really know what I did.
It was amazing.
Exactly.
She texted me and I was like, oh man, you can do that article because I can do something different. So I actually picked a different article to read.
Sorry.
And then realized. So that one will be my winter grab bag.
There you go. You already got a plan.
Okay.
So
Tell me
again,
about these M&Ms I get to get as part of my therapy. It sounds delicious.
yeah, well, not so fast. So this article is talking about the use of food edibles as reinforcers within the field of behavior analysis. And we've talked about this before. So there are reasons why one might be skeptical or cautious of utilizing edibles as reinforcers. And they give us several reasons why that could be, which include negative health impacts of eating, additional kind of empty calories, reliance on food is what they title a prosthetic source of reinforcement, which was just an interesting use of the term prosthetic. I hadn't heard it categorized in that way, although I obviously know what they mean when they say that. And then they note that these additional calories could contribute towards weight gain, which may lead to additional health concerns. And if you are also taking medication, as some folks might be, then this could additionally interact with that and make your lifestyle more sedentary, more unhealthy, etc. So those are all concerns. It also changes the relationship that one might have towards food by using it as a consequent rather than just having it be freely available, etc. So these are all things to kind of think about when utilizing edible reinforcers. They also say, of course, they are primary reinforcers, so they remain highly effective. And several studies have shown that they have utility and strength as a category of reinforcement. But we want to really balance the decisions here because it's a complex issue. So ethically, we should be thinking about selecting interventions that minimize client risk and produce behavior change that's likely to maintain in the natural environment as well. So these are also reasons why we might argue against edible reinforcement. So their answer to this was, well, why don't we take a look at our literature and see, at least on the research side, how often is edible reinforcement being used, what types are being used, in what context, etc. So they did kind of a mini lit review that was really concentrated on recent literature in order to attempt to answer this question. So our authors looked at 6 major journals in our field across the past, well, not the past, but recent 3 years. They did from 2017 to 2019. And they noted that they did this because after 2020, there was an increase in the number of articles published where the research had been done via telehealth. So that made it harder to use edible reinforcers / kind of have control over that as a variable.
I wonder what happened there. Wonder what happened in 2020.
Weird.
How come no one made the Wonka Zoom where you could, you could get the candy right through your telehealth?
Oh my gosh. That would be my worst downfall because I would just always be sitting here.
Just reaching in and
grabbing
into
candy.
your screen. So they left those years out. They didn't want to skew their data with that. And they looked at, those 3 years across 6 journals. The journals were JABA, Behavior Modification, JOBE, which is the Journal of Behavioral Education, BAP, Behavior Analysis and Practice, Behavioral Interventions, and Behavior Analysis Research and Practice.
What would the acronym for that journal be?
BARP. And so the grand total number of articles to start from was 806. And then, of course, they gave us a handy-dandy flowchart, which allowed us to see how they broke it down from there. So they first separated them out by experimental versus non-experimental. We didn't need to look at the non-experimental ones. And then from the pile of experimental ones, which were 407, I think, then they broke it down. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They separated out experimental versus non-experimental. And then they broke that pile of experimental ones down into, did they use reinforcement? Did they not use reinforcement? And did they only do a preference assessment? Because again, they were like, we're not worrying about preference assessment right now. So then they wanted to see just what was experimental and used reinforcement. So at that point, they ended up with 407. And then they sorted it into, did they use edible reinforcement, or did they not use edible reinforcement, or also did they not specify what type? Because they really wanted to just focus on edible. And so once they did that, they only had 134 left that used edible reinforcement. Of that 134, 23 used edible only, 110 used edible and something else. So that was it. Basically, like, this is like the main stat to take away from this article, is about a third of the relevant research articles published recently used edible reinforcement in any capacity. Okay. So around 33%. That's our big takeaway. And then they said, well, let's see what kind of edible reinforcement was being used so that we can have that information as well. Only 68 of those 134 told us. Most of them just said, we use edibles. And then, but then when they did, they were able to break that down further. And just so because I always love, even if it's like, I just love talking about food, I guess. And so I'm just going to read you these categories so you can all hear what they were. They had like 13 different categories of edible reinforcement: bread, cakes, candy, cereal, chips, cookies, crackers, dairy, fruits, juice, meat, nuts, popcorn, soft drinks, and vegetables.
Candy corn, candy cane.
Wow.
It's syrup. And the first one is candy. That's the one you're forgetting. Yes. So a lot of things to break down there. And so they categorize like when they knew it, which again, now we're down to only 68 of those initial 800 studies. But the top 5 category takeaways were, and brace yourselves, candy, 33%, chips, 14%, crackers, 12%, fruit, 11%, cookies, 5%. But then in a almost upset of the top 5 is that vegetables were the number 6
I love that.
most common. And it was like 4.6%, right behind
surprise.
cookie. I know.
Mhm.
So, wow.
So like one article compared to all the others.
No, now you've made me do math. I think
No.
4. I think it would have been 4.
More top.
Math. That's what I do when people ask me to do math. I just say math. and then I
Dairy
move
surprisingly
on.
low. Cereal surprisingly low. Bread.
I mean, I would work for bread.
Bread
A
is
nice dinner
reinforcing.
roll, you know.
I can't argue with that. But the overall point is, let's examine these trends in the
You're
data.
not like, we're not going to talk about the merits of what we like the best.
Trying to think, when's the last time I tried to use cake in a preferences set? It's like, how much cake do I need? I got to
Like a
cut it up
little
into little
Debbie,
bits.
you know,
Oh, like a little
like a
would Twinkie count?
prepackaged thing. Yeah, I would call a Twinkie a cake.
Yeah, I would too.
What about a Fig Newton? Hmm?
I love Fig Newtons. They're not cakes though.
Is it a cookie? Is it
I
a
think-
cracker? What could it be?
I think it's a bar.
Is it fruit?
No, it's fruit and cake.
Okay,
You
everyone.
just
you
wanted
said-
us to say that.
I know you did, but I was not going to
Play my mind games,
allow
Jackie.
you.
All right.
Oh yeah, play the mind
And then they
games.
gave us a handy dandy graph because, we need to have a graph. And it broke down reinforcer use across all the journals and all the years that they looked at, and the percentage of articles that were using reinforcement. So less than 10% of all of these articles in total use edible only reinforcement. Around 25% or so used edible and some other type of reinforcement. Over 50, but less than 60 did not use edibles at all. So used some other format of reinforcement. And then maybe like 18% did not specify.
Mhm.
So the did not specify is an issue, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
because
We need
this
to be
could come out to
specifying.
50-50.
Yeah. And so they definitely bring that up. They interpreted these results as overall fairly encouraging if we are going to go ahead and say that we would prefer to see less research conducted using edibles as reinforcers. Because, and I agree, I thought it was going to be higher than this as well. So only about a third of the relevant articles were utilizing edible reinforcers. Is there room for improvement there? I would argue yes. But there's like more questions that this produces here, right? Because we do need to know, are there situations in which edible reinforcement is perhaps the better option because it is effective at behavior change? Or are we able to look and say, wow, we have all of these other available types of reinforcement and we're seeing really productive behavior change via these means. Can we work as a field to really kind of phase this out of our repertoire of things that we continue to do? But more research is really needed in those areas. They also note that this was only looking at research practices. And that could be quite different than clinical practices.
Absolutely.
And I really don't know, right? Like, I think that really remains an open question
It's
here.
going to vary by setting. Yeah, I'm thinking about working in
definitely gonna vary
schools,
by
like
setting.
edibles in the schools. Like it's really hard to, because you have to get special permissions. Where can you get the food from? You need to tell, parents need to be able to send it in, which can be limiting to them. It can be, real cost. So a lot of times I just don't see edibles in schools almost as an unwritten rule of like, nobody bothers with this anymore. There's too many barriers to its use. So let's not.
Yeah. And in EI, I'd never used edibles either. So that could be an important continued area of research in this topic to see really like what's the pulse out there in real time. Because, here we are talking about research from 2017, which means it was conducted in 2015. And that's now 10 years ago. So things may have changed and they may look differently on the floor versus how they look in the lab too.
Yeah.
So that was an important point.
Based on the health habits of Americans, I would assume it must look so much better all these years later.
That was sarcasm.
That was some political commentary.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shifting gears.
They also note that, not all edible reinforcers are made equal. So there were some on that list that were more what they called nutrient-dense reinforcers, so not just like empty calories. They noted that fruits and veggies were rated within the top 6 most commonly used reinforcers. And then they went back and noted another article by Cronflee in 2019. In their article, they found that fruits and veggies were at least sometimes preferred over like really salty or really sweet options, and that they continue to function as reinforcers. So that's an article I flagged for myself to go back and take a look at.
So I was just thinking
you've
back
read
to
it.
Chaconian graph.
Did I already read it? Have I
You've
already read it?
Yeah.
and
You've read it.
Talked to you about it.
Did we do that? We
We've-
did it.
no,
Potentially
we-
written up something.
Potentially, we have a current thesis student doing a replication
maybe
of
that's why
Comfrey.
it sounds familiar.
Yeah. So,
Ding, ding, ding.
yep. You've read it and you thought about it and designed some
I
protocols.
read a lot of articles. All right. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But good job, Kemp and colleagues.
So if anyone says, "Oh, you practice M&M therapy," you should put them in a body slam and stick this graph right in their face. 1, 2, 3. You're
All right.
wrong.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. Now, mini pairings.
You're wow. I didn't feel condescended to at all with that statement. Thanks.
Mini pairings. I'm going to recommend episode 238.
I thought you only got one.
One per.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were
Because
saying
usually I
there's-
want to tell you like 12, but
Yeah.
now I'm just going to tell you one, which
Okay.
episode 238, moving away from edible reinforcement. That's just with the 3 of us, relatively recent. You can go check that out. And the snack that's going to be paired with that is what I had for breakfast, which was a protein waffle with a cut up peach on it and some peanut butter drizzle.
You just want to brag about your super healthy breakfast?
You love peanut butter.
I do love peanut butter.
Peanut butter's great. How come that's not it? Where would that fall in the
Nuts.
research here? It'd be nuts.
Mooch.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Okay. well,
Everybody
we're
can go
trapped
home
here,
now.
We're in the steel cage. All right, Jackie,
All right. So my
dive on in.
my second article that I've chosen, because I picked one and then threw it to the wayside.
We should just do an episode where we each pick the same article. We just say it 3 times in a row.
My second pick is an article by Richard Price. And is Richard Price, was that like a comedian
Richard
name?
Pryor is
Oh,
his
Pryor.
okay. But anyway, this article, I'm so jealous of it. So it is by Price, Loa, Volkerts, and Hyder. And it is in the Behavior Analysis and Practice 2024. And it's entitled The Ethical Landscape of Behavior Analysis Forums on Reddit. So
Oh,
what I love about this is that these lovely individuals got to go to work and hang out on Reddit while they were at work. in pursuit of research.
It's not always fun to hang out on Reddit, though.
I never do. So I never hang out on Reddit. Although when I read this article, I then did go to Reddit to see if
How'd that work out for you?
I just went to the behavior analysis subreddits.
It can be fun. It's
fine.
It's sort of like old school forums in a way.
Yeah. So this article, I think, is a really nice example how we can examine behavioral analysis through social media. I thought they did a really nice job. They, looked at it in a really professional way. And so I was really happy to see this article. So what they're looking at is how behavior analysts, or those that say that they're behavior analysts in the behavior analyst subreddit forums, how well they align to the BACB ethics code. Fun, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so fun. So I am going to give a spoiler because I feel like a spoiler is necessary. Spoiler alert, they actually found that most users in these subreddits were engaging with unethical behavior and aligning with the ethics code.
I was pleased to see that.
So many times, and when we read these articles, right, like the 2015, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly about supervision, and some other articles, right, it's just bad news. And when I saw this, I was like, oh, I'm going to have my students read it for our ethics class because we're going to talk about it. It's standard 5, public statements, right? And I was like, okay, I'm going to let them read it regardless of what it says. So then I was reading it and I was like, thank goodness that we're not doing badly and they can publish that we're not doing badly, right? I mean, obviously there was some ethical concerns in some of the posts, but overall there wasn't that many. So that was great. And so they decided to do this because we recently got a new ethics code in 2022. If anyone didn't know, it's new.
It's not that recent anymore.
It's
and
now
if you don't know, you're not doing so hot.
So there are a total of 6 standards in the ethics code. One being, the ethics code really focuses heavily on social media and how you can interact with social media in a way that's professional and that you can align with the field. And Standard 5, which is behavior analysis in public statements, really focuses a lot on social media and what you can and cannot post. And so I just thought this was really great. There have been some previous articles published before this most recent ethics code, a study by O'Leary and colleagues in 2017 that provided some recommendations on what behavior analysts should do in social media. And Broadhead and Higbee talked about some antecedent strategies that might help promote appropriate social media use. And so there has been some articles out there providing us with some recommendations on what we should be doing. And so this article wanted to look at, are we actually following them, right? So the authors did this study to look at the landscape of ABA in social media. They said the primary methodology employed was content analysis, a method used to categorize, identify, and analyze various forms of text to derive meaning. So they looked at 3 ABA subreddits, and then they used qualitative deductive coding, similar to what we talked about in a previous episode.
It's going to be a future episode.
A future episode.
We're recording a lot of episodes this summer.
I'm predicting the future. And so they had predetermined categories on the ethics code. And then they just went to these subreddits in February 2022. And they looked at, I'm not going to tell you which ones the subreddits they went on because you don't really
like our
need
behavior
to know.
Analysis.
Yeah, our ABA, our BCBA. They looked at that one. They looked at the experimental analysis of behavior, which I didn't even know had a subreddit.
I guess.
But cool. And yeah, so each author was randomly assigned 2 dates to collect data across these 3 forums. And at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on their respective days, they went to the subreddits. They viewed them. They went to the filter that said new, and then they looked across the whole 24 hours of what was on the Reddit forum, copied and pasted into a spreadsheet, and then they had that timestamp, and that's what they did for all days of data collection. Right? And then
what they had to stay up till 11.
I know, I would be like,
maybe they're on the West Coast.
I don't know. But they had to stay up till 11. That's big time.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all students and they're like, 11's easy. Not for us old folks. So the categories that they had were aligning with
They're in Illinois.
Oh,
Sorry. So it was 10 p.m. their time.
It was 10 p.m. So that's a little more doable.
Meditation. We were all very tired doing this research.
We all fell asleep. So the categories were aligning with the ethics code, not aligning with the ethics code, potentially not aligning with the ethics code. And then they had conversations about behavior not aligned with the ethics code and conversations about behavior potentially not aligning with the ethics code. Right? And so I just really think this is so cool. And then what they did is they have this table, which is beautiful, where they say, okay, here are the aligning with the ethics code. Here are all of our subcategories. Like if it aligns with the ethics code, maybe we're talking about certification, supervision questions, career recommendations, requests for resources. Things that didn't align with the ethics code included things like practicing outside of the scope of confidence, lack of protection with the data, client confidentiality.
It's a big no-no.
That's a huge one. Yep. And then potentially not aligning with the ethics code included things like administrative dishonesty. So talking about specific agencies and maybe some policies that they had in the agency that weren't great. Designing non-function-based treatment plans, right? So we don't really know what was happening there. Unsafe working environments were a common theme in some of these subreddits. So that potentially may not have aligned, right? But we don't know. And so I just thought this was so fun. Right. And then some other conversations that potentially wouldn't align up talking about billing dishonesty, not knowing what your role is in the workplace, minimal supervision. Right. So those could have been happening. So they don't really know. So
was it more like an opinion? Like, my supervisor never meets with me, but you can't actually confirm versus like, here is a picture of the sign off and we never met on this date would be a definite.
Yeah. So I thought that was really fun.
So can I just ask?
Yeah.
So in your example, is it problematic for the person to be posting about that because their boss is not behaving ethically? Or it's just like
potentially.
Or is it they've identified something unethical?
Yes.
It's more that.
Yes.
Because like some people don't have a community to talk about these very real issues.
Right.
But the issue that is being identified is just the content.
It's the content.
Not the posting.
Yes, the content. Yep. Okay. So, So here, right, it's hard to see if there really is an ethical violation because most times posts don't have the full context of like what's happening, right? Making it challenging to determine those clear ethical breaches, which they had those potentially not aligning parts. One reason that they suggested that Reddit is a nice place to have these conversations where you might see more ethical breaches is because of its role of being anonymous, right? Reddit's, you don't put your name, you put like, what's it called? A screen name. You don't mind screen name
handle.
A handle. You know mine would be Big Farts 87.
Oh, there you go.
Oh my God.
I've been thinking about it and I said it in class and everyone's like gross, but I love it. Big Farts.
With a Z?
Ooh. Yes. Yep. So that's what my handle would be. So if you ever see Big Farts 87, that might be me. Or maybe somebody already took it. I just think that's funny. But so the anonymous nature of Reddit may actually be not a deterrent for engaging in unethical behavior.
Encourager.
Yeah, it's encourager, right? Because users may be more likely to share sensitive information because they don't have fear of direct punishment, right? So the study really looks at everything and they're like, okay, most of the things that we're seeing, people are engaging ethically. Yay. Here are some recommendations that we think we should do to make sure that everyone knows what they should be doing, right? Because not everyone is in master's program, right? Not everyone's in RBT, but everyone's working under the realm of behavior analysis. They emphasize the need for organizations to do some proactive training on ethical social media use and what that might look like by providing clear examples and non-examples of what you can and cannot post on social media, right? Not just on Reddit, but like on all the any social media platforms. They have a recommendation for practicing clinicians, right? That they should really be heavily disguising client information so that I couldn't just go on Reddit and say like, oh, this is a 6-year-old boy that lives in Kentucky, Illinois. That's not that's not a place, but right. And just like our ethics code states in public statements in the standard 5 of behavior, talking about public statements is that we should never make specific treatment recommendations, right? Because we don't know the full context. And we should always make sure that we are referring back to literature and using disclaimers. And all of that should be part of that organizational training. That should be happening like on an ongoing basis. So I just really like that. And if you feel the need to say something, right? Like Diana said, if you're like the only BCBA in like a 200-mile radius and you don't feel like you have a community, right? Don't ask for specific recommendations, but ask for resources.
Yep.
And then behavior analysts can provide resources such as literature, websites, or right context for experts in the field that align more closely with our ethical code than providing specific treatment recommendations. Yeah, and so that's what that study did. So not bad, but they do have some really great recommendations. I love the organizational training on social media use. I don't think I ever received an organizational training on social media use.
Think about when you were in graduate school, how popular was social media?
I know, right? I was too
everyone
young.
used.
Yeah. No, it really. I'm too old. But I'm wondering. So when I asked my current students how many of them received training on what can be and cannot be on public and private social media platforms, only very few of them had any sort of organizational training.
Yeah, one thing I know I'd love to see in an organizational training like that would be a more in-depth discussion of what is identifying information, because I think it's very different to be like, I'm out with my friends and we're having a drink and I'm like, I work an hour away from where we are, so my mentioning this or that is probably not identifying information. Right. But when you post something online, it doesn't take as much for the person that you might be talking about to sort of be able to identify themselves.
Yeah.
And there is that thin line between it, but I didn't use specific identifying information. But you said enough that the person that you are speaking of might reliably say, I think they're talking about me or my child. So I think that's something I'd love to see a lot more guidance as to avoid this. One thing I used to do was when social media was, I will never, ever, ever, ever talk about work or anyone I work with at work, because then I can never screw that up. But you can still screw up. I give people recommendation. There's still a lot of areas to screw up. But at least then I don't have to worry about confidentiality. One thing less to worry about.
Yeah. And one thing that I was surprised about, and my students were surprised about when we were talking about this article and then talking about the implications of social media, is that when a company posts a picture of a student, right, and maybe they have all the disclaimers and they say that they've done informed consent, that individual can't then share it on their private page, right? And so everyone was surprised. They're like, our agencies ask us to share it on the private page. And I'm like, well, that is against the ethical code.
Yeah, we talked about that with Dr. Mallory Quinn. We were talking about sports performance and that weird middle ground of it's ethical for me to post this, but the second you repost this, it's not ethical, even though you didn't technically do anything.
Yeah, so it was just, they're like, wow, I'm so surprised. But if there's any supervisors out there listening to Grab Bag, this would be a really fun discussion that you could have in one of your supervision meetings about like social media use and how your company uses social media versus how you professionally might use social media, or how your supervisor, your trainee is using social media. So that might be a fun.
I think I'm going to do that, Jake. I like the idea because it's one of those sort of knows, like, be careful with social media, and then that's your training,
right? Yeah,
which is not a good training.
So it was a fun conversation anyway. So
excellent.
That's it. We did it.
What's the mini pairing, Diana?
Yes. So the mini pairing for this portion of the show is episode 51, where we discuss ethics and social media.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. A couple of real throwbacks.
We sure have done all the topics
in our mini pairings here. And Jackie, I need to know what you ate for breakfast.
Sadly, I'm going to tell you what I ate for breakfast and what I eat for breakfast basically every single day.
Okay.
Because I am so routine oriented that I hate deciding what to eat for breakfast. So I eat the same thing every morning. So this morning, like yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, I had some oatmeal with berries. Today, the berries were blackberry, raspberries, and blueberries. And I also had an English muffin toasted with unsalted, crunchy peanut butter.
Ooh.
And a glass of kefir.
Wow.
That's pretty good. I mean, oatmeal berry is supposed to be like the breakfast to eat.
Well, I couldn't just eat that because then I get hungry later. So I had to also have the English muffin with peanut butter. I can't have one or the other. I have to have both. Otherwise, I get starving.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the kefir is just a protein boost.
Yeah. I like it.
Great.
I do too.
The only thing I
Thank you.
take out of that, blackberries, those things are, I don't think I've eaten a blackberry in the past 10 years that has not gotten a giant seed jammed in one of my teeth. So
You're doing it wrong.
I hate them very much. For that reason only. They taste good.
So
I
that's-
just-
Swallow them whole.
That's your pairing.
even when I try not
Thank
to.
you.
That's a good pairing. It's a good
Yeah.
breakfast.
Good stuff.
All right.
Now it's
well,
time for lunch.
all right, everybody.
is.
That brings us to the end of the Grab Bag Summer Slim. And who was the winner?
Who won?
You, the listener. You won. Congratulations. Yay. Here's the giant ABA Inside Track belt. You can wear that to your next conference. And it's very impressive. You look great. All right.
Step into a Slim Jim.
There you go. That should have been the pairing. Just Slim Jims for everybody. All right. Well, that's the end of our grab bag. We hope you enjoyed it. We do these. Mitch, you remember we used to, the plan was
Periodically.
we were going to do one of these every 12 episodes for
We
some
We got
reason.
away from that. We
Too
just
hard.
have
And then we
so
just
many
stopped doing it.
things that we want to talk about.
So now we're just grab bag a season.
Yeah. Just
That's our goal,
I don't
which
even know if we'll
would
do it
be
a
every
season.
12 episodes if we stay to it. But
It may or may not be.
I don't
We'll
know.
see.
You'll get one when you get one.
We like them, but you know, they're fun. We like them. We like them and they're fun. So there we go. Anywho, we hope you enjoyed ABA Inside Track. Please leave us a review on any of the podcast players you like to go to and subscribe to the show. If you would like, you can check out our website, abainsidetrack.com, where you can find links to all of these articles, as well as to all of the other episodes we've ever done. You can also purchase CEs there. How would you do that? Well, you click on the link and you put in some code words. Code words? Would you like the second code word, everybody?
Yes, please.
It's Hulk. Hulk. Is it a green Hulk or that blonde Hulk?
Is
who
he
would rip
wearing
his
yellow
shirt off
underpants?
with his yellow underpants? Whatever Hulk you want, just know the code word is Hulk. And if you want access to our episodes a week ahead of time, access to all of our special bonus episodes, discounts in the CE stores, and even some free CEs, head over to patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where you can subscribe there at the free 3, 5, 10, or even $20 levels to get various access to all those great things I talked about, including at the $10 level and up, our seasonal book club episodes. You actually are in the middle of the summer, or you're near the end of the summer when this comes out. So I hope you've been enjoying our summer of book clubs. All of those CEs could be yours for free. You're really the winner there. Just subscribe at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. And as always, you can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Some final big thanks. Big thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music, Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music, and Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his amazing editing work. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Oh, yeah. Bye.